Hello and welcome to this episode of Science Verity. Today we are going to be looking at the response to stimulus. A stimulus is a change in an organism's external or internal environment that produces a response. This response is one that will aid the survival of the organism. The stimulus is detected by a receptor which passes an impulse through neurons to an effector which carries out the response. An animal's response to a stimulus generally moves it towards beneficial environments, like finding shelter during a storm or moving to a territory with a greater food source, and away from the harmful environments. Internal stimulus tend to move towards an optimum for metabolism, such as raising or lowering heart rate or temperature. Responses are classified in three main ways. Taxes are a simple response that is determined by the direction of the stimulus. If the stimulus is found to be positive and useful, then the response is to move towards the stimulus, and if the stimulus is negative and harmful, then the response will be to move away from it. Kinesis is the random movement of an organism to assert a positive or optimum environment. This means that the stimulus is less directional, something like temperature. The more unpleasant the stimulus, the movement is more rapid, so that the good environment is reasserted. Tropism is found in plants, and like with taxes, there are positive and negative responses to and away from the stimulus. Each response is named after the stimulus. An example of this would be positive phototropism. This is the plant's response to light. Light is favourable as it aids photosynthesis, so the plant will grow towards it. The nervous system is made up of two major divisions, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The latter is formed of two sections, the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system make up the autonomic nervous system and are antagonistic pathways. The sympathetic nervous system speeds processes up, like increasing heart rate, and the parasympathetic nervous system reduces the processes, i.e. slowing the heart rate down. Neurons make up the nervous system, and there are three types found within it. The three form a reflex arc, where the sensory neuron passes an impulse to the relay neuron, and the relay neuron passes the impulse to a motor neuron, who provides the effector with the impulse. A stimulus is detected by a receptor, and the impulse created is passed along a sensory neuron. The electrical impulse is passed through the central nervous system by relay neuron, where the stimulus is registered, but the brain doesn't think about the response, it is automatic. The impulse is sent down the motor neuron to the effector, which responds in turn to the stimulus. Because this is automatic and involuntary, there is little delay, as reflexes are usually responses to negative stimulus. For example, with something hot, receptors in your skin pick up the stimulus, which is the heat. The central nervous system registers this, but the impulse is transferred to the motor neuron, which causes your hand to move away from the heat source as quickly as possible. As mentioned before, the autonomic nervous system has two divisions which are antagonistic. They work against each other, doing opposite things. It is self-governing and controls many of the involuntary processes in the body, such as heart rate. Heart rate is something that must be constantly altered so that blood flows around our bodies accordingly. It is controlled by a centre in the brain called the medulla oblongata, which has two centres, one sympathetic for speeding up the heart rate and one parasympathetic for slowing heart rate down. These two centres respond to internal stimulus brought to them as impulses via chemical receptors and pressure receptors. Chemical receptors are found in the wall of the carotid arteries and are sensitive to changes in the pH of the blood. When the blood has a high carbon dioxide concentration, the pH lowers. This is sensed by the chemoreceptors, and they increase the number of impulses to the medulla oblongata. The sympathetic centre increases the heart rate by increasing impulses to the sinoatrial node. This increased blood flow removes the carbon dioxide from the bloodstream, which increases the pH. This pH increase is registered, and the heartbeat slows due to the reduced number of impulses sent by the parasympathetic centre in the medulla oblongata to the sinoatrial node, in turn decreasing the heart rate. The Pacinian corpuscle is specific to mechanical pressure and is a single sensory neuron that is at the centre of layers of tissue. It has a stretch-mediated sodium channel, which is so called because of their permeability to sodium, which changes as they change shape, and this is used to produce a generator potential. In their normal state, the sodium channels are too narrow for the ions to pass through, so the corpuscle is polarized. When pressure is applied to the corpuscle, it changes shape, and the membrane around the neuron also changes. The stretching widens the sodium channels and allows the diffusion of sodium ions. This diffusion causes an influx of sodium ions, which changes the potential of the membrane, creating a generator potential. This then goes on to produce an action potential that is passed along the neuron. So, to sum up, each stimulus has a response due to the nervous system, where impulses are sent via a receptor to a sensory neuron, through a coordinator to a motor neuron, which then causes an effector to respond to the stimulus. A reflex is an automatic response that doesn't require a coordinator due to the immediate nature of the response. The heart rate is controlled by the medulla oblongata, which responds to both chemical changes and pressure changes within the circulatory system. The Pacinian corpuscle is a layered membrane that surrounds a sensory neuron and uses sodium ions to produce a generator potential. Thank you for watching. Science with Verity.